Welcome to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. You know, Reason for Truth, where the truth comes first and the reasons come last, but we're always constantly learning. Because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well. That's going to show true of today's episode. I found a great article that I just had to share with you. Yeah, this is by Christian Broadcast Network, CBN. It's entitled, Israel's AMB and Bahrain, Israel, and then Israel Gulf States united against Iran thanks to the Abraham Accords. Now, the Abraham Accords are a joint statement between the State of Israel and the United Arab Emirates and the United States, reached in August 13 of 2020, not too long ago. Subsequently, the term was used to refer collectively to agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Believe it or not, that's towards Wikipedia, but I think it says it pretty well. Give you some context there. But listen, this is the article was written by Chris Mitchell, August 26, 2022 at 4:33:29 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, morning guy. Yeah, someone's putting him out, at least publishing it then. And it says, Manama, Bahrain. The Abraham Accords saw Israel sign historic peace agreements with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. Few people have witnessed the dramatic transformation in the region like Eitan Naik, Israel's first ambassador to Bahrain. From the birth of the Abraham Accords on the White House lawn in 2022, Ambassador Naik, that's N-A-apostrophe-E-H, so I guess it's Naik, has been a key player in the agreements. This is what it says. It's quoting him. They are a significant, in fact, historic change to the course of events in the Middle East. And Naik told CBN News during the exclusive interview in Bahrain's capital. And he goes on to say they are an effort to take a road that has not been taken before and establish relations with Israel and Arab countries that's proving to the rest of the Arab countries, to the rest of the world, to the rest of the region, that it is possible. Now, we know at the end what happens. We know what happens to Israel. We know what happens in end times, right? Eschatology, rapture, tribulation, and what happens to Israel in there. But we don't know when that is. Some people say, well, that's the roost. Well, for the time being, this is a good thing, I'd say. Always have to try for peace. Just don't, again, apathy. Hate that word. We tend to do that a lot as Christians. I tip my hat to the Jewish nation here, Israel. And it goes on to say, just 100 miles from the Bahraini capital of Manama lies Iran and its regime that represents an existential threat, not only to Israel, but to the tiny Gulf country. Ambassador Naik says the Gulf countries see the Iranian nuclear deal just as Israel does. Aha! And it goes on, he quotes him again. He says, we hear from them exactly what we say. The threat and the threat perceptions and the threat levels were pretty identical by those who live in the region, by those who experienced the behavior that Iran got infamous for. And the concern is real. We all know that the mother of problems in the Middle East is Iran. All we have to do is watch the news. We just covered a whole episode, Naik said. Doggy, do you want to know how to tell the truth? Go ahead, check out. We just published, or we're going to publish, I don't know what order, the whole thing on a Harvard Business Review from almost 30 years ago, speaking how the media and the government messaging are the same. Perhaps a little bit of that's going on here, but I'd have to say I see this as pretty straightforward and pretty truthful. I'll let you be the judge, read it for yourself. CBN News met the Israeli diplomat as part of a delegation to evangelical church leaders led by Joel Rosenberg. Now, during our time in Manama, violence continued to rock Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Ambassador Naik explained the rioting is nothing new, is what he said. And he says, he quote him again, in the 30s, during the Jewish immigration to the then mandatory Palestine running away from Hitler just prior to World War II, what the Palestinian leader, Haj Amin al-Assani, saw as Arab indifference, he came up with the idea of how to attract attention, and the Al-Aqsa was the answer. The Jews are threatening the Al-Aqsa. He decided to disseminate that fake news. This is the important of this. You hear what he just said? He's here to disseminate the false news. There's true news and false news. Since the invention of news, especially the media and radio and video and news and TV and internet, whatever, You have to combat bad news with good news, but we ultimately have to be able to discern the truth. Want to check those episodes out, so subscribe. Boom, little plug there, and make sure you hit the alert bell. You won't miss it. And he goes on to say they didn't call it fake news then, but it caught fire and it's still catching fire, says Naeh. He said the rocks being thrown are not just Israeli police and Jewish worshippers at the Western Wall, but I guess they are really throwing at the Abraham Accords, said Naeh. He says, I ask your viewers to zoom out from just this evening and say, look, they are doing it for the second year since Abraham Accords were signed in order to derail the Abraham Accords. And as I was reading this, I just caught another news piece that I think 3 Jewish people in Israel were stabbed by Palestinians to death. Or at least stabbed. I guess I thought they died, but maybe not. God willing, hopefully not. Ambassador Naes points to the media's impact in the region. He says the peace process cannot advance without public opinion. And the public opinion here in the region is being influenced by other media outlets that disseminate lies, fake news. And the role of the media is to really show the truth uncut, to show the truth, to give the full picture and to explain to people what they are trying to do here, and that is immensely important, he wrote. Naeh also said they welcome prayers from Christians around the world. Powerful. Man, Israeli diplomat saying he welcomes prayers from Christians around the world. And then he goes on to say, yes, we need those prayers. He says, we need those people who can come and visit to see in their own eyes that a new reality is being born. And those among your viewers who have business in the Middle East, come. Do business with Israel, with Bahrain, with the UAE. Bring people together. And still pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the region. Wow. Man, this, with all the bad news, boom, this guy's awesome. And I see a lot going on here in Israel. Well, my dad's from Italy. I'm seeing things, I'm just excited what's going on in the world. All the bad news, there's great things happening too. And this is a great thing. So we make sure we do a few things here in Takeaway. Number one, pray for Israel. Pray for peace. Pray for the Arab nations. Listen, I have some friends that are Muslim. I have some friends that are Arab, and they are super cool. Family-oriented, great food, by the way. And you go to these countries, UAE, they're open for business. I think the world's changing. And it's not all Osama bin Laden type Muslims that we have this perception before. Things are changing. So as things change for the bad, things also change for the good. Let's be in prayer for Israel. Let's be in prayer for America. Let's not be afraid of our Jewish friends or our Arab friends or our Muslim friends or our black friends or Asian friends, whatever they may be, white friends. How about that? Our Italian friends. And even if we're Sicilian, hey, don't be afraid. We love you. Give you a hug. Listen, at the end of the day, let's seek God first. From there, God put everything back in order. I hope this has been encouraging to you, a little bit of good news. But I want to say, man, you go back to Abraham. He's the father of the Jewish nations, right? And he's the father of the Christian nations. He's the father of even the Arab nations. They share that commonality. Ishmael was the wild donkey written about in the Bible. So let's take our commonalities and build on them. And in that, I'm going to take this gentleman's offer to pray for him in Israel. We need to be. I'm going to do that. I'm going to add that right on my prayer list the way that he asked me to do. And then when I have my Jewish friends, I'm going to reach out to them especially and say, hey, you know what he just said? I'm praying for you because your ambassador just asked that. So God's blessings to you. Let's lift up to Israel, the Jewish nation. Let's lift up one another. And let's reach a world, a sick and dying and hurting world. They look like they got it together, enjoying, but there's a lot of anger because there's a lot of hurt. Jesus Christ is the ultimate physician, the ultimate healer, and his love is, it's uncompromised, and it's unconditional. God's blessings to you. Thank you for tuning in. From our family to yours, stay strong, stay in prayer. Make sure you subscribe. Boom. Hit that alert bell down there. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Hopeful Truth for today.